Hello and welcome to this edition of A Conversation With, and joining us again for a second time here is Rick Kidder, the co-CEO of SouthCoast Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for joining us. Just to update us again on what's going on.
Sure, Jim, and it's a pleasure to be with you. I hope everybody out there has been staying safe and enjoying the summer.
As we start the summer season, we're starting phase 3.
Correct.
Some things are allowed now to reopen. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about where we stand business-wise here in the region.
I think the business community is still in kind of a watch and wait. A lot of businesses have reopened. As we know, a lot of the restaurants have reopened, so that we get a sense now from folks about where people are what people's tolerance is. Restaurants are full. They're full to the extent, at least at this point legally, they can be full. Other businesses are playing it a little bit more slowly. I was in a meeting this morning with a group of small businesses, almost all of whom were still primarily working from home. And they're going to continue to do so as long as they can, but some businesses can't. But it's also uneven. Some businesses are actually doing quite well as we go through this reopening process. And then there are businesses, for example, like the tourism industry, that is still devastated and remains devastated. They're trying to reopen, but it's very difficult for people to be getting here. And so at this point, we're really uneven in the way things are going. People are, however, happy. They're getting optimistic about the idea of the doors being open and returning to whatever this new normal looks like. But at this point, there's still a measure of apprehension.
What are some of the things, I don't know, 2 or 3 things that you hear from your members that are really the most important things that they need, I guess, resolved?
Right.
Before they even feel even more confident and really open up?
And there's quite a few, actually. I mean, a lot of people are trying to bring workers back. There is still the $600 federal stipend in place that is supporting people on unemployment at this point, helping give us something of a soft landing. But bringing people back often means that they are making a decision to go back to work and also perhaps even earn a little bit less than they were earning before. So it's a challenge to staff up. And then there are other challenges that kind of cascade from that. One of those challenges is childcare. It's difficult to go back to work if there's no place for your child, and the childcare options are few and far between going forward. So that's a challenge. Others actually have a fear that perhaps if we go back, we may start to look like Arizona or Texas or California, which have seen some tremendous spikes. So right now, everybody is kind of a little bit on edge, and it's a challenge for businesses to bring people back. What we're hoping for is that we get some good federal legislation that allows for a continued soft landing of some kind, but also a real incentive for people to come back to work. But that's going to mean that the child care issue has to be taken care of, and some decisions that have to be made come September about what's going to happen with our schools.
Right. You talked about the southern states that are
Yes.
seeing an impact right now. I'm curious if the businesses, when they see businesses down there open up, and now some of them are closing in many places, are they worried about that I'm sure they're worried about it happening up here, but people have said Massachusetts has done well.
Oh, absolutely.
In planning and processing. So is there are they worried in a sense that how are they treating that, I guess?
I think they're treating that information very carefully. I think there's been very high praise for the way the governor and our elected officials and the mayor have handled the issues here, to the point where we have started to see a diminution in the numbers that is really quite dramatic and very good. But we've also seen elsewhere what happens when they haven't followed those same kind of protocols. So, as a New Englander, we have a tendency to believe that we're vastly superior to everyone else anyway, where it's built into our DNA. And actually, in this case, I think we're proving that that slow approach that we've taken is one that should be the model for all of the states.
Do the businesses feel that too?
I believe they do. And I think, for example, if we didn't have the negative examples of what's going on elsewhere, businesses might be itchier to say, okay, let's just go back to work and let the chips fall where they may. But the reality is they're seeing that, and it is putting us in an infinitely better light, because the last thing that anybody wants is to open up and then to close.
Correct.
because that would be devastating.
I was just going to say, and that's a bad scenario, but as you look at, from your expertise, as you look at the other states and the reclosing, how bad is that they have to reclose?
It's hugely bad.
Compared to what closing the first time.
Correct. We all knew, and it's funny, and I think you and I talked about this the last time we were here. One of the things that I think surprised almost everybody was how quickly, once COVID began, how quickly the economics started to unravel.
Right, the dominoes.
The dominoes,
yeah.
and they really unraveled astoundingly quickly. Now, if you look at the Associated Industries of Massachusetts, they do a business confidence survey. And they do it on a monthly basis. And lo and behold, what we're seeing in Massachusetts is that business confidence is starting to rise again. Now, it had a long way to go because it had hit the lowest point
Correct.
it had ever been.
Right.
But it's starting to rise again. It's getting almost 80% feel that it's actually improving. So now, I think, to be honest, we're looking at this scenario and saying, okay, if we had to close again, we might not reopen. And a lot of companies are looking at it in that way. They've been lucky. The PPP has been a great help to many of these companies. The EIDL loans have been a great help to many of these companies to help them get their doors open at a lower cost of dollars. But the reality is there's not an unlimited source of funds. Mm-hmm. And if we have to go through this again, I don't know whether the federal government would be able to step up as they have before. So right now, I think our businesses are saying, okay, we're glad we're not them. We've done it right.
The one thing I've heard too from people is, especially when I think of the restaurant industry particularly, is the outdoor dining, people seem very comfortable with that.
Yes.
That decision. I know the mayor has, they've allowed restaurants to do that. It seems to have, I don't want to say a success because I know it's less people, but it seems to have alleviated some of the concerns that people had going out.
I think it's done a couple of things. I think there's been a pent-up desire for people to actually get out of their homes. And there are those who are going to stay back and say, I'm going to continue to wait for a bit. But when you look at the limited openings that restaurants have done and what they've been able to do with outdoor dining, we're lucky it's summer.
Right.
If this were February, we'd be talking about a very different story.
Correct.
But B, I think what we're seeing is some of that pent-up desire to get out is being gratified. And the restaurants that I go by are full in their outdoor areas. They're enjoying themselves. We even have a new restaurant that's opening up this week. They just had their soft opening, and they're opening up this week out on the city pier. So there's a lot of good stuff that's happening out of this, but those restaurants haven't fully staffed either.
Right.
They've staffed minimally to be able to handle the load that they can do.
And even though they are open, they're still, from what you see from national stories and what have you, they're still losing money.
Oh yes, yes.
I mean, I saw a couple of interviews where we're just hoping to break even.
Right. And there are a couple of restaurants that, just because of the way that they're situated, don't lend themselves to having an outdoor dining
Correct.
space. They may not have a parking lot that they can use for that, or enough street frontage to be able to make it worthwhile. I was talking to one restaurant in downtown who has decided not to open up even their inside space because they were a small enough place that to open up and meet the guidelines, they'd have one table.
Right.
Well, it didn't make much sense for them to do that, so they've continued with nothing but takeout and curbside.
And the takeout and curbside for some places, again, if that's your sort of forte,
Mm-hmm.
Pizza places and what
Yep.
have you, a lot of people aren't going in to sit there and have their
Right.
meal. They'll just take it to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the one that we shop at locally, it's still busy. They're still doing okay
Yep.
for what it is right now. I mean, okay now is different from okay before.
It is.
But they'll take the okay for right now.
Right now, I think at this point, most of the businesses that are in the hospitality industry are looking to stop the bleeding. And if they can stop the bleeding and start to generate some revenue that can still make sense for them, even if they're not making a ton of money, but if they're actually breaking even or a little bit better than that, that's a big win.
Right.
But we're all looking for the day, and we don't know when that day is going to be, when things are, quote, back to the normal that we knew before. We're hopeful, but as Governor Baker has indicated, it may be some time before we start to see what a phase 4 looks like.
Is there any business or industry that has surprised you that has done, and I don't want to say well, but has done better than expected during this crisis?
Yes, actually, interesting enough, the fishing industry has done very well. I had an opportunity to spend some time with a captain of a fishing boat for 4 hours one day on the golf course. And he was telling me that as a scalloper, he originally came from Cape May, but he fishes out of New Bedford. And what he was saying is that for a couple of weeks, they had a challenge with what they were going to do with their catch.
Yeah, because I was going to say the restaurants are closed, so they're not.
They have done very well, and their prices have held, and they've held because people are buying those same things and cooking them at home. So it's been absolutely fascinating for them. So some of those industries are doing very well. Some industries have been absolutely devastated. You would think hospitals that would have done well with all of the emergency cases and the COVID-19, but that's not where their bread and butter is. Their bread and butter is
The elective surgeries.
the elective surgeries. Yeah. And so they have taken it on the chin. You look at some other businesses like Merrow, Charlie Merrow's business in Fall River, or Joseph Abood here, and they've actually pivoted. And they've done things like make masks. They've done things like make PEP. They can't bring back all of their team, but they can bring back part of their team and be able to contribute to the public good while at the same time generating some revenue as well. So some have done okay. There are others that it's not going to be even. You know, some are going to come back very, very, very slowly. From what I'd heard most recently, Titleist had done a gigantic layoff, for example, because nobody was playing golf, nobody was buying golf balls, nobody was buying golf clubs. Yet now they're back, and I think they're back full time now. So that demand is coming.
And you
back.
see that, you know, and for them too, it's nice to have the PGA on. Their tournaments are still going on.
Absolutely. There may not be any fans out there, but their tournaments are going on. There's a lot of interest in it, and the golf courses are open.
Correct.
So you can go out and you can play and you can enjoy yourself.
Rick Kidd is our guest here, the co-CEO of the One SouthCoast Chamber of Commerce. I'm curious if you think, and you probably don't have the answer to this yet, but how this will change business in the future. Because businesses are trying to get through it now, but you're going to have to, I would think businesses are going to have to think, things are different now. I mean, Zoom, and you know, they're talking about how government and our stuff is changing. I would imagine business is the same way.
Business is the same way, and business obviously governments are battleships. It's hard to turn battleships, but businesses have a tendency to be more like a canoe. It's a lot easier for them to change direction. And what we've seen in business so far, and I've heard every business talking about this, and ours is a very good example. We have 2 offices. We have an office in Fall River. We have an office in New Bedford. We used to drive every Monday morning to the office in Fall River to have our staff meeting because they had parking there that was readily available at their building. So we would spend 20 minutes driving there, meet for an hour and a half, spend 20 minutes back. We basically killed 2.5 hours of our Monday meeting. We will probably do that twice a year. We're going to be meeting on Zoom from now on. We're going to be using that platform. We're also, as we expand our programming, for example, we're going to expand it into a combination of live and Zoom. Have as many people as we are allowed to have in a space, but also have it. But I think what's the biggest challenge is going to be in bigger urban areas where the cost of commercial real estate is so high, businesses are starting to find that people working from home solves a whole lot of challenges. And you may very well see that a lot of businesses are going to take the experience from this and say, all right, this can actually be much more of our new normal going forward. We don't need as much office space as we had before. We don't need everybody in this building from 8 until 5. We're going to be able to do things in a much more flexible manner without losing productivity.
Is the one-on-one approach or the personal approach, obviously that's impacted now, but how do you see that impacting business down the road? I mean, when you were a kid, you always wanted to do face-to-face things. You always wanted, when you went shopping, it was you wanted to try stuff on or you wanted to see what you were getting. And obviously it sounds like that's going to change, but I'm wondering, is that good or bad?
I think it's both. I'm in the people meeting people business. and the whole purpose of a Chamber of Commerce is actually to bring people together. And for us, it is devastating not to have the ability to bring people together into one room, introduce so-and-so to so-and-so so that they can do business together. For us, that is always going to be a part of what we do, and we've been lacking that ability in the current technology. So, yeah, it's a profound negative for us, and it's going to be. And I don't know about you, but the psychology of doing business with somebody, I want to do business with somebody I know.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to do business with somebody I care about. I think I have 5,300 connections on LinkedIn. And of those 5,300 connections on LinkedIn, I probably know 200 of them.
Yeah.
Those are those people I know,
Right.
that I can make a decision about. I'd do business with this one, perhaps not with that one, but I'm going to do business with that 200, not the 5,300.
And we're not even talking like hospitality and stuff. You're talking plumbers or electricians
Absolutely.
or carpenters or you name it.
I want to meet people that I'm going to hire. I want to meet people that I'm going to work with. And so I think we'll have to get back to that. I don't think any of our technological breakthroughs or workarounds now will become completely permanent.
And the thing that I was thinking too is, you look at the history of this country and the history of businesses and what have you, there's a lot of collaboration that come because so-and-so met so-and-so.
Absolutely.
And if that doesn't happen,
Absolutely.
do those collaborations take place?
Right. If you look at the Brady Bunch screen that is a Zoom meeting and recognize, yes, you've got a whole bunch of people who are talking to each other, but that is not the same and never will be the same. Because you actually have to know people, you have to read their body language, you have to get a
See
level
what
of
they do.
comfort and see what they do in order to want to work with them and do business with them. So what we have is never going to be enough. It's okay for now, but at some point we've got to get back to the handshake, the casual conversation, the opportunity to know and trust somebody by seeing what they do and where they do it, not in the Brady Bunch.
You talked earlier about this is the summer tourism season,
Yes.
and this is such a tourism area, and for a lot of businesses, and I know you have obviously the tourism aspect. You try to bring people in here.
Yep.
It's like this across the country. So you've got the national park here, and
Yeah.
Fall River's got the Battleship Cove, and there's so many different things here. So how do you try to bring people in right now?
That's actually very interesting because let me give you some numbers first. Tourism in Bristol County, just in Bristol County, which is the Regional Tourism Council that we're in charge of, tourism in Bristol County brings in roughly $630 million a year into our economy. And the cool part about that $630 million is the vast majority is what we call OPM. It's other people's money. They're actually importing it. It's not just money that is
Right.
exchanged among ourselves. So
A lot of it's day trippers.
yes, a lot of it's day trippers. And we are looking now at a set of numbers, because our year ends with the state's fiscal year June 30. We're looking at a set of numbers now that said that we have been impacted just in the last bit of this year. More than $276 million has simply evaporated from our economy as the result of challenges to tourism since COVID. We're looking at a year coming forward that is going to be probably no better. So what we have to do is market ourselves differently. Our marketing has always been to individuals more than 50 miles from where we are. So it's in New York, and we're a drive market. So it's New York and Pennsylvania and Eastern Canada and other states in New England coming into this area to take advantage of our tourism amenities. We're going to have to start bringing people in from nearer. People who are willing to say, okay, I'll drive an hour to see this wonderful thing, to go to the New Bedford Whaling Museum, to have a nice dinner, to do the things where they spend the dollars. What that doesn't do for us is help our hotels. We want our hotels to be able to fill up as well. And there are so many challenges with people other than from the New England states. Those are the only folks who can now come to our hotels
Right.
and not self-quarantine.
Yep.
for 14 days.
In the Northeast, yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, too, is really the tourism season is year-round.
Right.
Kind of January, February, I know it kind of peters out, but some people have told me, some in the tourism, like, once the half marathon hits mid-March,
Yeah.
we're going.
Right.
And it goes all the way through December when you have the Christmas events
Yep.
and what have you.
Absolutely.
First night, or city celebrates.
Exactly. Exactly. What happened, and most cities and most tourism areas have their peak season, and what they expect for us, the peak season would have been right now, but their peak season. But they also have on top of it what they call the shoulder seasons, the ones just before and just after the
Right.
peak season, where things you need attractions to bring people to want to come. And we've lost a lot of those. The Chamber, for example, runs Chowderfest every year.
Right.
That's 4,000 people come to Chowderfest. They come from all over the place to come to Chowderfest. What are we going to be able to do this year? We don't know. We filed our paperwork, but we're not sure. The Feast of the Blessed Sacrament, what is it, 200,000 people end up going through the feast. And a lot of those come from all over the place in order to come. This year it's canceled. Now with that probably is the cancellation of hundreds of hotel rooms as well. So it's a real challenge for us to look at tourism going forward, but we're going to have to pivot to the local dollar.
And I've always chuckled because growing up in Wareham, I always thought that Labor Day came and the summer ended, especially for the kids who went
Right.
to school.
Sure.
Your friends who
Yep.
were in the area. But a lot of people were still coming down on the weekends, really until
yeah.
Columbus Day.
Oh, absolutely.
And they would, we'd go swimming and what have you in September.
Yep.
And to me, summer always ended really Columbus Day weekend.
Right. And it's funny, as for me, as someone who loves to travel, I tend to avoid the peak periods anywhere. And I love to go on the shoulder seasons. I love to go in October to the Cape. I love to go to the Vineyard in October. And I will spend my dollars and do that because A, I'm getting more bang for my buck, and B, there's fewer people around, but I get to have as good a time as if the place were jammed with folks.
So are the people optimistic, though? The businesses, are they feeling as though, there's still a lot of unanswered questions, but is optimism there right now locally that, okay, the worst is over, we're going to tread water right now and muddle our way through?
I think, to be honest with you, Jim, that people are optimistic and apprehensive at the same time. They're trying to temper the optimism a little bit, and that apprehension is for logical reasons. This is one of the very few times when we've had this invisible thing that is totally out of our control, where all we can do is attempt to mitigate the effects of it, and it has had this effect on us. So I haven't seen anybody who is gung-ho optimistic, we're ready to fly. It's always tempered with a little bit of that apprehension and care, because I think the business community cares about its employees, cares about its workforce, wants to make sure that everybody's safe and healthy, but they also want to make sure that they can get back to profitability. And right now, that's still some question marks.
But it sounds like, too, that your basic, especially thinking downtown right now, or even on the Ave or what have you, that the drop-in customer,
Right.
That's a tremendous loss because people aren't walking,
Right.
window shopping, I guess is the word.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of that walk-in traffic that businesses are used to getting as a percentage of their business, whether you are Handy Andy's Vacuum up on the Ave, and you're used to somebody looking at something in your window and walking in and saying, hey, I need this or I need that.
Especially this time of year.
Especially this time of
because
year.
this is when people are walking out.
Exactly. Again, it's one of those challenges. Yes, they can be open, but are people actually going to want to go out and wander around? And we haven't seen that as much, although it's kind of nice to see with the holiday weekend that just passed, there were a lot of people out and about.
The bar owners and what have you, I know that they're still closed right now.
They're still closed.
Are they still, I haven't talked to any, but I'm just curious, do they understand? Do they see what's going on down in the other parts of the country saying, I'm glad it's not us, or
Right.
should we be open?
Everybody, I believe, understands. and all of those bar owners wish that they could get their doors open.
Yeah.
So it's, again, one thing is tempered with another. They do understand. They've seen.
And understanding is not, I don't even know if that's the right word. It's just because they're business owners. They want.
They get it. They get it, but they want their doors open.
Right.
And you can't blame them for that. That's their livelihood.
Correct.
So it's a tough one for them, and you have to realize that's part of the unevenness we were talking about. Some are going to get back to pretty much full steam relatively quickly. Others are going to take a long, long time, and it's going to be a long, long time for that business.
How about the mask issue? Have you heard from, and I know that business owners talk about this, but the people, and I know the governor's saying wear a mask, and the mayor talks about the mask, and it seems a lot of people do wear the mask going in. Has that been a huge issue here?
It hasn't been a huge issue. It's been a small issue. You will find that there are occasionally people who, I think you know this. I moved here from Arizona, and Arizona, one of the challenges they have is that there's a very strong libertarian bent to Arizona of you, the government, can't tell me what to do. And so there are constant conflicts there about masks. Here, I think we have a sense that government is responsible for our public health, and as inconvenient as those masks may be, I haven't seen, quite frankly, anyone who said, I refuse to do it, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to march past you regardless of what you say. So I think we're in a much better place than a lot of states when it comes to dealing with that issue.
And it's interesting too because when you walk into the shopping stores right now, they've got the directions and where to walk and what have you. But I mean, I've seen people walk in and it was more forgetful than anything else. And somebody says, "Oh, you need your mask." Completely spaced it.
I'm one of them, and I walked into just a small neighborhood store the other day to pick up a bag of ice. Left the car without my mask, walked in, got stopped right at the door saying, "Can't come in without a mask." There you go. Pain in the neck? Sure. Right idea? Sure.
Right. And nobody, I haven't seen any incidents, let's put it that way, that made it bigger than it was. Just, all right, I forgot, I'll go get it.
Yep. And I think people by and large are complying with that, and they're comfortable complying with it. They get why it's the case. Now, is it likely that over month after month we're going to tire of this? Sure. It's also likely that month over month we'll get so used to it that it really, frankly, your mask will become your new fashion
wardrobe accessory. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's going to do it. I appreciate you coming in. We'll obviously keep talking to you in a couple of weeks as things have going on. But it's an unbelievable time, and I'm sure when, as a chamber director, you're sitting there going, "What will tomorrow bring?"
We're always wondering. We're always wondering, but we're always grateful to have an opportunity to talk with you. So thank you, Jim.
That's going to do it for this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you again soon.